I may be a proponent of technology in the classroom, but physical flashcards are still the way to go for vocabulary review. Today I'm going to run down my ultimate guide for using flashcards to review vocabulary. While I will be specifically focusing on learning German, these tips are helpful for any language you may be learning. In case you're unaware, German nouns have 3 grammatical genders, plus the plural form of the noun. This means that for every noun in German, you need to memorize if it is masculine, feminine, or neuter, and then also its plural form. To make this a little bit easier, I suggest using colored flashcards. Now I picked these up from Dollar Tree, I think, for like $1 for about 100 of them. And they come in yellow, pink, blue, green. Now the blue and the green are a little bit too close together for my personal taste, but they'll still do for the purposes that we have today. Choose a color for each of the nouns. So you would have a masculine one, a feminine one, and a neuter one, and then one that is for non-noun things. So, verbs and adjectives and other things like that. Now, it doesn't matter which color you choose for each gender. It just means that you need to be consistent with whatever color it is that you do choose. So if you have red for masculine nouns, make sure that you're always using red flashcards for those nouns that are masculine. If you have green as your thing that you use for non-noun things, use green all the time for that. So don't switch it up and change from green to blue to red or whatever. The color has to be consistent throughout whatever it is that you're studying. And I don't mean just like this chapter needs to be consistent. I mean for the duration of you learning this language, you need to be consistent from beginning to end, the same colors every single time, forever, okay? As long as you are learning this language, stay consistent with your coloring. You may have already noticed it whenever I mentioned it before, but I used the masculine form er, he, and sie, she, on the same color that I would use these genders to begin with. So we have der Bleistift, which is a pencil, and is a masculine noun, so I put it on this pink one, whereas die Giraffe is a blue one because it's a feminine noun. So I keep these consistent with nouns as well as the pronouns so that they always match, even if it's just a pronoun. For things that don't have genders, for instance, du, I would put that on one of those yellow ones like I used for things that aren't nouns. So this is a verb, but you get the idea. Now, if you don't have access to different colored vocabulary flashcards, I would recommend using different colored markers or different colored pens for each one that you use. So green could be neuter things, purple could be feminine, black would be your non-noun category, and then red could be your masculine form. I recommend using black for those non-noun category things because this is going to be the one that you use the most often, and it's going to be the one that runs out the fastest. It's also the one that's the cheapest to buy, so it's a good recommendation just to kind of stick with the black one for that. Now, when you're writing out a noun vocabulary word, you need to make sure that you have das Buch, that's the singular form, and its gender, das, and then also the plural form, die Bücher. If you're doing this with an irregular verb, you could put essen, which means to eat, and then ist, that's the present tense form of the verb. Then you have aß, and then hat gegessen. If you're having trouble remembering if something uses haben or sein in the present perfect tense, I would recommend writing it on the flashcard there while you're doing all of your other flashcards. It just makes things simpler down the road. Now, why do I use colors at all? Whether it's using different colored markers or if it's using different colored flashcards, why do I bother with color at all? Well, the use of colors gives your brain another thing to kind of grab a hold of and associate the gender with the noun. So das Kino is in green, which means that it is neuter. When memorizing the vocabulary, your brain picks this up as an extra form of input that it can use to solidify the memory. For example, I remember when and where I learned certain words because of the thing that happened directly before it. Maybe it was food I was eating or friends I was with or something else, but using colors kind of gives your brain something to associate with that gender. And when you think of a word, your brain thinks of the color and then you can remember the gender. Make sure that when you're writing out your flashcards, you use large, clear letters and you write slowly. A lot of people try and rush through this whole process of making the flashcards so that they can review using the flashcards, but writing them out is part of the learning process. And if you take your time on this and you do it properly, writing the flashcards can be just as, if not more, helpful than just using the flashcards themselves. So this is my normal handwriting, which you can see is smaller and it's kind of rushed and you can't really read it from a distance. But if you use like this one, where I used Essen and I used it quite a bit larger, I took my time, I wrote it out slowly, my handwriting is still atrocious, but it's much more legible than the other version there. So again, writing them slowly helps to kind of solidify this stuff into your brain a little bit more. Now, while you're writing them down, don't just write them down. While you're writing them, say it out loud. So I'm writing das Buch, die Bücher, the book. And while I'm writing it, I say those three parts over and over again. Das Buch, die Bücher, the book. Das Buch, die Bücher, the book. Das Buch, die Bücher, the book. And as long as you are still writing it, you should be saying it out loud. This does several things for you. First of all, it helps your pronunciation because you're practicing the words that you need to be able to say by saying them out loud. Saying them in your head doesn't have that same effect because your brain doesn't give that muscle memory to your tongue. So you still have a little bit of learning to do even if you're doing this in your head. It also makes it so that you retain the information more because, as I mentioned before, adding extra ways for your brain to associate these things together makes it so that your brain remembers it better. So if you say das Buch every time you see the word Buch, your brain is going to start associating das Buch with that. But if you don't say die Bücher as the plural, you're not going to have those two things stuck together, so you're going to be thinking all the time, okay, what's the plural of Buch? I don't remember, but if you say them next to each other all the time, every time that you write these down, your brain starts to associate those things together. Now, once you actually get to the studying part of things, I always start German to English first. So I see the German word die Giraffe and die Giraffen for the plural, and then I see on the other side giraffe. Always look at the German version first because recognizing a German word is easier than coming up with it yourself. So seeing this German one will work better for your brain at the initial stages. Once you learn them for a little while, you can look at the word book and you can say das Buch, die Bücher. So it's easier to come up with those German ones once you have started out looking at the German first. Now, while you are doing this, you're not just looking at the word and say in your head, okay. It doesn't work like that. You have to say things out loud again, because again, this is another opportunity for you to pronounce the words that you need to learn, but also for you to give your brain one more way to kind of hold on to that word. Das Buch, die Bücher, the book. Das Buch, die Bücher, the book. And don't stop again at one time. Don't go das Buch, die Bücher, the book, and then go to the next one. Essen, isst, aß, hat gegessen, to eat, and then move on to the next one. No. Say er, he, er, he, er, he, er, he, and then move on. Once you have gotten through all of these with the German first, flip them over and try it the other direction. He, er, and then go on to the next one. Make sure that your brain knows how to use these in both directions. It's not just that you need to be able to recognize German words, but you should be able to come up with the German words when seeing the English ones. So if you're translating from one language to the other, this will make things a lot more fluid for you in the future. Now let's say you don't have access to flashcards or you don't feel like using flashcards. I don't really care what your real reasoning for it is, but you can make a modified version of your flashcards so that you can start learning these things without actually having flashcards. So what I do is I take a piece of paper, this is just a normal piece of paper, and I folded it in half, okay? And on this first part here, I wrote das Schaf, die Schafe, and then on the inside, I wrote sheep. Okay, and then in between I cut a little line here so that I can have this separated off. Don't make it so that it cuts all the way through. You don't want to have this separated away from the entire piece of paper, but you want to have it so that you can look at one word and then you can look at the next word and you don't have to worry about losing one of the words in between or something, okay? And usually what I do is I write them out first and then I cut, because otherwise you're going to end up having to cut along lines that don't make sense, okay? It just works out better for spacing that way. Again, don't forget you should be using your colored pens or colored markers for this rather than the blue pen that I used in this example. Now, for those of you who are wondering, why not just use the electronic flashcards or the ones that are online or even the Quizlet ones that come with my ebook? And the answer is very simple. If you are using the ones that are online, your brain doesn't get that extra knowledge from writing the words down and saying them out loud as you're writing them. If you're just typing them out, it takes less time, sure, but the problem with that is your brain doesn't have that extra little connection, and that's what I want from writing out these physical flashcards. Also, a lot of flashcard apps don't let you color code them, so you can't have red for masculine and blue for the feminine like I had with these colored flashcards. And you can't do the same thing again with these white flashcards where you have them separated out by color again for each of the different colors that you're using. So again, digital flashcards don't have these extra nuances that you can use. Also, the act of having something in your hand while you're learning, it's a tactile thing. You don't have this whenever you're looking at a flashcard on a phone or a flashcard on a web app. It just doesn't have the same feel to it. And so you need these flashcards in physical form, whether it's in these colored flashcards or these white flashcards with colored words on it, or even just this piece of paper with a couple of cuts in it. No matter how it is that you're doing it, having this thing in your hand gives your brain another thing to kind of grab a hold of and just keep that information in your brain for longer. If you have any other flashcard tips that I didn't share in this video, leave them down in the comments below. If you're looking for a way to start learning German on your own, check out my ebook, which is linked in the description, Beginner German with Herr Antrim. Thanks for watching. That's all for today. Tschüss!